All right, here we go. All right, so we're here with EUNISSES Hernandez. She's running for CD1 against the corrupt Gil Cedillo. Are you ready for this? It's gonna be it's gonna be interesting. Are you ready?
Yes, it's already interesting, and yes, I'm ready. I only committed to running because I felt, community one was asking and it was time. And so I might be what folks might consider on the younger side, but I have a lot of experiences, both, from many years ago, but also like currently. And so I'm hoping to bring all those experiences to the table.
No, for sure. And I wanted to thank you for stepping up because it's big. It's very I don't know if you remember the last CD1, Gil Cedillo versus Joe Lee. I mean, it got ugly. It was a lot of drama and shit. And I wanted to thank you for your courage, just to even put your name out there because, like, we've met before, and it's no joke. Like these fucking city officials are very corrupt. I was talking to a candidate last night. She ran against Kevin DeLeon, and I helped promote her, and the first thing that Kevin DeLeon, when she announced that she was running, the first thing that Kevin DeLeon and his crew, they actually went to her mom's restaurant, and they had a meeting with the mom, and Kevin was like, hey, can you tell your daughter to drop out? And if she does, I'll give her a spot when I become mayor. So these are true stories, right? People were like, you're making this shit up, but no, these are very true stories. And it continues to this day. And I don't know if you heard the Smoke Screen podcast on Jose Huizar. It's very detailed, like it just, and because I interviewed with that with Mariah, and I told her, like, all these individuals like Jose Huizar, Gil Cedillo, Kevin, they're only piece of the big puzzle, right? It's a big corrupt system. So yeah, I wanted to thank you for stepping up and running for CD1. Okay, so tell me about yourself. Where you grew up at and everything, and your policy and your platform.
Great, thank you, Mando, for that question. So I was born and raised in Highland Park in Northeast LA. I still live in the same house that my mom bought when I was 1 year old. Here, right in the middle of Highland Park. I graduated from all the schools: Monte Vista, Franklin, Luther Burbank. I've lived my whole life in this neighborhood, on these streets, and what I've seen growing up, and what has informed my values is, growing up, I saw my loved ones, my friends, my closest loved ones impacted by regular jails, immigration jails. My friend in 2011, his life was ruined because of a weed conviction. I've seen how the recession, really drove my friends into trauma. They lost their house. Like, we graduated in 08 from Franklin, and that's when the recession started. So all of these things inform, like, why, one, the type of work that I do and why I do it, but the values piece, which is very important, which is not leaving anybody behind, not building something we'll have to destroy in the future, and not giving more money and more power to the systems that harm us. So that's what I've been bringing to the work that I do with coalitions such as Justice LA, with an organization that I helped found called La Defensa, and many others, where we do work at the local and state level to move away from relying on prisons and jails to meet, to serve the crises that we have in our communities. And so that's what I've dedicated my life to locally, at least for the last few years, at the county level, to try to close down Men's Central Jail, which luckily now sits in CD1 after the redistricting. Our goal has been to tear it down, and so I'm hoping we can help support with that. But my three main priorities coming into office are going to be budget accountability. We pay millions upon millions of dollars in taxes. When you go to McDonald's, when you go to the liquor store, when you pay your property taxes, all of this money goes into one big bank account. And that money could go to anything. Right now, 45% of that goes to the LAPD and to, the carceral responses that we have. And so looking at that budget and assessing that budget at the county level, at the state level, part of my work was to work with the team of folks to comb through each of the line items in the budget and say, look, at the county level, they're giving $2 million to prosecute parents for not being able to take their kids to school. What about reinvesting that $2 million and actually supporting families to get their kids to school? And so, but what I mean by budget accountability is combing through the money, figuring out how we prioritize it. folks that I look up to a lot, such as Assemblymember Isaac Bryan, Senator Holly Mitchell, talk about how a budget is a statement of your values. And right now our budget, values arresting people, shooting people, and relying on these systems. So budget accountability. The next piece is housing for all. Our district CD1 is made up of a significant number of people who are renters. And right now, we see people on the streets, and like, again, the most obvious people we see are people who are suffering from mental health needs, who are suffering from problematic substance use. But we need to also take a step back and realize that the houselessness crisis is being fueled predominantly by economic and financial reasons. LASA says that 60% of the people who are houseless right now are houseless because of those drivers. When these people are not people who haven't been here for a long time. 7 out of 10 people who are houseless here have been living in California for over 10 years. And so when we mean housing for all, it's one, stopping this river of people who every day are becoming evicted and houseless because of economic reasons, by enforcing and developing stronger renter protections, and then building affordable housing. CD1 is like the number 2 in building affordable housing with some thousand units, with a few thousand units. But in LA City, we have 41,000 people who are homeless and houseless on our streets every single day. A few thousand affordable housing units is not enough. We need to build way more, but with the caveat that this needs to be affordable housing, not affordable housing as in people are making, $100,000 a year, but really affordable housing that reflects the income of the neighborhood where they're building. In CD1, our AMI medium income is $32,000. $32,000, and that's really high because we have Mount Washington, which there's really high income in Highland Park. So when I talk about we need to build affordable housing, it's deeply, deeply affordable housing for folks who are making hardly any money. And then the last piece, and I know I've gone a long time, sorry, Mom.
No, that's good.
The last piece is public safety. But public safety in the lens of the work that we've been doing. So normally when we think about public safety, people think about law enforcement. You call 911, someone shows up with a gun and a badge. But it's been my experiences, like I mentioned earlier, growing up, pushing on these policies and other lived experiences that, these systems, even if you call 911, like I have in the past, will not help you. And so for me, public safety means developing and implementing life-affirming responses to crises, such as people who have mental health needs, intimate partner violence that could happen, investing in preventative measures. At the county level, most of the work that policies that we've been moving has been a closed down Men's Central, but to replace and to build out a system of care. So right now in CD1 or even in my neighborhood, if I think about, okay, where could I take someone for services? There's really no access. And so part of public safety and part of life affirming responses are to build up that system of care. LA City doesn't have a health department though. And so it's how do we leverage county and state money and departments to support with that? And also to move away from these responses and to actually move the money. So part of the budget accountability, but also in public safety, to move money into other like safety responses. We talk about removing, law enforcement from, like people have talked about removing law enforcement from public transportation, and that's great. But that also should be replaced with, case managers. We should have people who have dedicated their education and their lives to like de-escalation and other crisis response, to be in those roles, to work with bus riders and bus drivers to keep things safe. So we have a lot of ideas. We have a lot that we've been working on at the county level that we want to leverage. But for me, we can't do anything if we don't move the money. We're not going to solve houselessness unless we stop people from becoming houseless and protect renters. And we're not going to be safer, especially with, media coming out and saying that crime is up, if we keep relying on these responses of like, you call 911, but the harm has already happened. So how do we prevent that? That's where we want to focus on. Okay,
great. Yeah. Okay. There's last subject. Okay. So let's touch on, so we just with the crime. Okay. So, I know there's, you've seen all the robberies that's going on right now. And I always said, like I always tell people that, there's going to be some day where the poor are going to be tired of being poor and hungry and homeless, and they're just going to start taking from the rich. This is my opinion, but it just looks like that's what's happening. So let's talk about, because I used to be a bus driver actually, and I'm glad you hit on that and the transportation security. So LA is crazy, right? Like So when you pick up people, you pick up some crazy ass motherfuckers out there. They'll just start hitting people or, you know, whatever it is. So your plan, like for like transportation security, is to put more like what you kind of hit on it. What was it?
Like case managers, crisis intervention workers. And when you know, you just said, Mando, like there's people who have like different, like they perhaps are reflecting like mental illness as they're coming up, and even violence is sometimes a symptom of that mental health needs. But that's the thing, right? Like, why are people with mental health needs like going onto public transportation and having these crisis moments? It's because there's no real response in LA County. And I know we're talking at the county level, but you know, LA City is the largest city in this county and they're so interconnected. At the county level, the #1 department that's sued is the sheriff's department. And the #2 department that's sued is the Department of Mental Health, because the Department of Mental Health has failed our city, it's failed our county, both like it's led to a reliance on jails. Like our jails at the county level are the biggest providers of mental health services. And so, yeah, I'm glad you said that. But I'm also like, when we think about what the response should be, it's like, one, we need to be pushing Department of Mental Health to step up and invest resources in actually supporting and addressing the needs of people with mental health, especially people who have mental health needs and who have had like convictions in their past, who have been impacted by the criminal justice system, because it's often those people who are also barred from accessing services. They say, oh, you have a record, you have this conviction, we're not going to give you mental health service, you can't access that here. So even in policies like that when we want to build out services, and when they're built, their policies are created to make it inaccessible to people. And even for people who are migrants, you know, not making reentry services or other services, like creating barriers if you're not, you know, someone who's you know, a citizen or someone who has a different immigration status. So yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
But around
yeah, and like homelessness too, because that's, you know, that's a very complex issue, because, you know, if some, you know, I don't expect you to like solve homelessness, but like it's very complicated, right? And one of the problems is mental health, like a lot of people don't have mental health services. And I always wondered why, like, how come these people don't get mental health services? And then, you know, there's other people who want to live on the streets, other people that, you know, are addicted to drugs. And then there's other people who got evicted and you know, are living out of their cars. It's a very complicated issue. But like my first question, like, why isn't there any, like a lot of the homeless people that have mental issues, why are not being helped?
Yes, and that's really, I think, a failure of the Department of Mental Health, and a failure of you know, our county and our city, of not building up the systems and the services that would help people. You know, we think, and I've talked to a lot of people about this, is that folks are saying like, yeah, why don't people just go to treatment? Why don't people just get into mental health housing? And it's not that simple. It doesn't really exist. Like, you know, inpatient treatment barely exists for substance use. In LA County, we have a county of over 10 million people, and we have less than 100 beds for the people who have this most serious mental health needs. Literally less than 100 beds for a locked facility for people who have this most serious mental health needs, of 10 million people. And so when we see people on the streets who have mental health needs, you know, this is a conversation that I've had with my family for years, because it started with like, you know, oh, look at that person whose house is on the street right there. Like, oh, mira ese vagabundo, you know, like blaming the individual. And after years of doing this work, after years of being behind the scenes and seeing how the bureaucracy, the county, the dollars, the policy move, how they drag their feet, how they, you know, they would prefer profits over people, or not spending money over supporting people. Like I've seen that in having to explain that to my family. Like, look, this person is suffering on the streets right now, but it's our fault. It's our fault that this is happening. And but I mean ours, it's like, because, you know, we are the ones who push these departments. We are the ones who pay taxes into these departments and hold them accountable. And it's not about individual people failing. It's about, as a society, we have like, and as a system of care, like that doesn't exist, like people are just gonna fall through the cracks. You know, we used to have mental health hospitals that existed back in the 60s, and, you know, they were all torn down. What happened was is that, you know, the federal government told localities, all right, you all figure it out. We're going to give you money to build out, you know, these mental health hospitals. And they didn't. You know, a system to support people with mental health needs was not built. And even now, like the services that are delivered, again, there are barriers to people accessing them, especially if you have a criminal record. I'm sure that when we look at the data, a significant number of people who are houseless have gone through the criminal justice system multiple times. And so even that piece of like, one, we don't have enough services. And two, for the services that exist, they're not adequate enough to meet the needs of our people. And three, there are actually barriers and obstacles for the beds that do exist for people to be able to access them. And if I could just add one last piece, Mando, you know, you said around, you know, people not wanting, like people wanting to be houseless. And I think that is something that, you know, a lot of people share of like, oh, you're a person's house is only because they want to be houses, because if they wanted housing, they could get it. But it doesn't work like that. You know, there's a mentality of like, you have to pick yourself up from your bootstraps, but many people don't have bootstraps. Many, and just to add to the last thing I'll say to this is that, when I started doing this work years ago, one of the first jobs I had was at a reentry facility for men and women coming out of prison and jail in downtown. And working there, and then I got exposed to other reentry facilities. I saw how people fall through the cracks. I saw how these, like, in one of the first weeks I was there, I had like, I told you earlier that some of my closest loved ones have been in immigration jails, and they said that the worst part of being there was being a woman and being strip searched. And one of my first weeks at a reentry facility, I had to strip search a woman coming in, and that fucked me up. That has never left me. And the reason is because, like, one, it's happened in my family, but to have to do it to someone else, like, and this example is what I'm going to refer to as like, there are services that exist, but they're carceral in nature. And what I mean by carceral in nature is that they act like jail. They strip search you. They take your belongings. They search through your belongings. You're wearing an ankle monitor. You can't go anywhere for the first 30 days. You have to ask permission for everything. You can't take your loved ones, your pets. And so even for the treatment and services that do exist, right now, they're based on models that are very carceral. And so when we talk about building out a system of care, it's about, you know, building up a spectrum that has these different types of slots of services that meet the individual needs of people, because 12-step doesn't work for everybody. Forcing people into treatment doesn't work for everybody. And this is only happening in low-income brown, black neighborhoods, in migrant neighborhoods. When you think about, you know, where Lindsay Lohan goes to treatment, where these rich people go to treatment, it's not dealt with the same. It's, you know, these bougie houses in Malibu. It's not these carceral facilities that are throughout our county where there's bars on the windows. And so I just hope people also can think about that. Like, yes, like there are some treatment that exists, but it's like a jail and you're dehumanizing people. And even if a person doesn't want to go, like I went to Seattle and to study a program called Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion, where they worked with the people who had been the houseless for the longest and who had problematic substance use on the streets. And what happened was, and what law enforcement told us from that, is that even though some housing slots were able to open, it took months and maybe years. It took months and sometimes years for some of these clients in the LEAD program to sleep in the housing that they were provided every single day, because of how used to, like, they were sleeping on the streets. A woman had been on a bench for over 10 years, a bunch bench, living there. And it took her like, I think they said 6 months for her to be able to fully be able to go into her housing and sleep there every single night, because sometimes she would come back out. And we're humans, and it might sound like it's corny, but it's not. It's real. And I think we have to really think about that as we're building out these services, because if we can't keep blaming people for the failures of society that, you know, people who have privilege have set up.
Yeah, and I always think about those tiny homes right there in Highland Park, right? Because I always pass by and I'm like, damn, that looks like a fucking concentration camp. Like, seriously, like it looks like locked down. Nobody comes in, nobody goes out. And like, is there anybody even in there? I know a lot of the residents around that area weren't even, and people are going to argue about this, but like they weren't even told that they were going to build that. Because I talked to several people. I know it's a complicated issue. I know people need housing and stuff. But yeah, it's just like, like I'm kind of like confused on those tiny homes, because yeah, it looks like it looks like a jail, seriously.
Yeah.
And it's locked down. I know, and it didn't clean out the homeless problem in Highland Park. I mean, because people don't want to live there. And like you said, it's like jail. Like, I don't know how they work it, but yeah. And then yeah, so then the other problem about homelessness is like yeah, like the substance abuse. And like you said, people, not that the 12-step program doesn't help, everybody. It's just a very complicated issue, right? It's just like, it's not like, okay, we're gonna build tiny homes and that's it. And that's how, like, Kevin DeLeon was, pushes that, and Gil. But yeah, it's just a very complicated issue. And I just want to, hear your thoughts on that. And how would you go about, like, putting a dent in trying to help that crisis? Like, what would you, like, when you go to office, what would you do to try to help the homeless?
Yes. So, I mean, like you said, houselessness is a complicated issue. And so it has to be dealt with in various ways. A large part of people who are houseless, again, are for financial and economic reasons. And a large number of those people just need a little bit of support to pay their rent. And so there's something that's called a rent voucher that comes from the federal government. And our goal would be to house people, like using the rent vouchers, folks who just need a little bit of support to get back on their feet and house them. That's one of the strategies that we'll use. Another strategy that we'll use is to work with the county to build out, substance use treatment here at the city level. I've been trying to push a program that might sound too radical, but it's happening all over the world. And I visited a few of these sites, but they're called safe consumption sites. They just opened one in New York, where it's a place where someone can actually go take their drugs and go, like, in a little cubby, use their drugs and stay there. And in these facilities, there's doctors, nurses, healthcare workers, case managers, there's programs, there's arts and crafts, there's employment services, food, pharmacies. So when we think about, like, what other alternate things we could do, because, Mando, this is a complicated issue, but we've been dealing with this issue the wrong way for the last, decades.
Yeah, for sure.
It's been the same responses over and over again. And the same responses are what's led us to 41,000 people on the streets. And so when I say, like, some of these things are radical, that it might be radical for here, but in other parts of the world, in other parts of the country, like, it's actually having a real big impact, especially locally, where we're having, people die of overdose, particularly around fentanyl, and having high use of methamphetamine. Like, how do we provide services that address those needs? The Starbucks that's on York and Fig, someone died of an overdose last year in the bathroom. And so for me, it's one, and I spent a significant part of my career working on drug policy. At the state level, I've been to Portugal to study their decriminalization model. And I'm hoping to bring those tools that I've learned to build out the services that people need, because criminalizing people for drug use, arresting them, hasn't led to anything but us wasting millions and millions of dollars on incarcerating them. And so that's the strategy around people who have substance use needs. And then around people who have mental health needs, this is why I'm really excited that Men's Central Jail is in our district, because in the work that I do in my day job with La Defensa and the Justice LA Coalition, we've been working for years to stop LA County from building 2 new jails. And, we were successful in 2019 in canceling those contracts. They wanted to build a women's jail in Lancaster and a jail for people with mental health needs, a quote unquote mental health treatment facility on the land that Men's Central Jail stands on right now. And so for me, it's like, we stopped those contracts, but now we're working, my day job to close down Men's Central Jail and build out, treatment, housing, and services on that plot of land through community engagement. So even when we talk about, the mental health piece, my goal is that particular goal is to tear down Men's Central Jail and to build out mental health treatment services there, permanent supportive housing, affordable housing. Something about the bureaucracy and the government is that they don't want to pay for people's long-term housing. That's why they keep saying, we need more shelter beds, we need more bridge housing. It's like, no, yeah, we need more housing, but we have to stop with these baby Band-Aid solutions and actually invest in the things that are going to be in the beginning costly, but it's because we're shifting, right? We're shifting into new way of doing things, and that's going to be more permanent supportive housing, more affordable housing. Last thing I'll just say is like, you know, it might sound expensive, but when we look at the budget in LA, we're spending about $1 million to incarcerate one young person in a probation camp for 1 year. At the county jail level, we're spending nearly $70,000 to incarcerate one person for a year. And, you know, we have people at the county jails who are sitting there for years and years, like 7, 8 years and more. And so $70,000, that could pay someone's rent. That could pay someone's housing. And so, yes, it's going to be a shift, but those are the three pathways I see of really us addressing the homelessness issue: building affordable housing, renter protections, providing more mental health services, tearing down Men's Central and building something there that'll support community. There's also the Lincoln Heights jail. You know, that process already happened. It's closed down, but that was a waste where we could have also built mental health and supportive services and housing. And then, it's a lot of these pieces, but it's a multi-pronged approach.
No, you got to think outside the box, because whatever they've been trying to for the past 20, 30 years, it's not working. It's actually getting worse. So like, you got to think outside the box. And like, when I started Nelly United for Students, you know, I just started thinking outside the box, right? Like, you know, and I talked to the counselors at the LAUSD, and I asked them, like, what do the students need? And, you know, and the two things they need is food and housing. You know, I could get the community to get food, but like the housing is a whole different animal. And I mean, you have to think outside the box, because whatever they're doing now, it's just not working. It's getting worse. And let's talk about development. So like I remember I asked Gil Cedillo, I go, you know, why are you, approving all these developments, especially like in Highland Park? And he said that because when you build more development, it fixes the rental market. Like, for somehow reason, right? The rental market would fix itself, right? Because you have more units. But in reality, when you look at like downtown LA or all these developments, they're so high, people can't afford these new condos and units, and a lot of them are empty. I've heard like downtown LA, like most of those buildings are empty and stuff, and you got outside investors like Chinese, and they come and buy these houses or condos, and they rent them out. Like so if you become councilwoman, like what's your approach on development? Because I know it's a very hot topic, especially with Jose Luis's indictment.
Yes, that's a great question. And I've been trying to figure this out because I'm an expert in the criminal justice field and those policies and the budget. And so this is a piece where I've been really having to learn and mostly learn from community though. And to hear from them around this piece. We need to build housing.
That's a great answer. That's a great answer.
Okay.
Because we don't know I don't think nobody knows the answer to development, right?
Yeah, but I actually like, that's to say that I've actually like try to learn as much as possible because of how much it's been impacting at least Highland Park. Like, they take over an apartment and everybody who lives there is gone, and then it's now a luxury apartment. I don't have, growing up, I went to high school here. I went elementary, middle school. All my friends lived in this neighborhood. Now my friends don't live in this neighborhood because they can't afford it. Their parents might own a house here, but they can't live here unless they're living with their parents like I am. And so I think we need to build. LA City is building astronomical numbers of housing, but it's not enough to meet the number of people who are becoming unhoused. So we definitely have to build, but this is where the caveat comes in. And this is where I had like a little bit of struggle to try to understand there's like different levels of affordable housing. Mm-hmm. There's like affordable housing built where it's like at this 80% income level, right? Above where the poverty line is. Mm-hmm. And so that's actually, you make a higher income. If it's an affordable housing at the 80% level, you're a higher income. We don't need affordable housing that's at that 80% income. We don't need to be building more luxury development. What we need to be building is a deeply, deeply affordable housing where the AMI or where the percentage is at the 30% or below level. Because when we think about like what I mentioned earlier around the median income in CD1 being $32,000 a year, that's even high. Why do I say that? Is because people in Chinatown, people in MacArthur Park, they're not making over $32,000 a year, but that number is at 32,000 medium because people in Mount Washington, people in Highland Park are making higher incomes. And so when we think about even building, affordable housing, it needs to even be below that 32,000 level if we're gonna really house people. And so, yes, I'm a believer in building, but development should not come with displacement. Development should actually be doors to bring people in who have been pushed out because of development that's displaced them. And so I think, we need to be very cautious. There's certain projects that council members have a lot of discretion over, and there's projects that the councilmen don't. But I plan to leverage every single power that and every policy that we can to make sure that anything is developed what meets the needs of people who live in that neighborhood, that meet their income, that if we're building deeply affordable housing. And just to say, I'm not taking any developer money in our campaign. We're not taking any special interest money. It's all community money because we're for the people. For far too long, developers have had an easy way and an easy door into our communities, and that's torn our communities apart. And that people might say, oh, that's exaggerated, but it's not, because now I have people living in Lancaster, I have people living in Riverside, I have people living in all these other places where now we have to drive hours to get to see our loved ones because of displacement, because the affordable housing wasn't built, because it was turned into luxury housing. So yes, I'm a believer in building, but it needs to be built so that the people living there can afford it. And I'm not talking about people coming in like as gentrification and meeting their high income. I'm talking about the people in MacArthur Park, the people in Chinatown, our elders who are on SSI, who are on GR, all of these things, and who have multiple part-time jobs. Like people are still struggling. And so, yeah, that's how I feel about development. Even though I'm still learning a lot about it, I can this is what I know that I've studied and I can for sure stand on that's how I feel about it.
No, for sure. Yeah. And an argument is, when a developer comes in, they'll be like, oh, well, I'll have like 10 units that are affordable housing, but then they base that on the market rate of the area, and the market, like in Highland Park, the market rate is like $3,000-$4,000. So like you said, it doesn't really reflect the actual community members that could afford this new developments. Yeah, it's sad, and I'm glad you're touching on gentrification in your campaign. You're probably the first one ever to touch on it, but it's like in Highland Park. You grew up in Highland Park and you've seen it, and I've been reporting on the past 6-7 years, and it's just devastating what's happening. I remember when I came out the first time in 2014, after I saw Nelly Alliance come out. People call me racist and whatever. But like after all these years, after all these businesses have been kicked out and residents, and now like everybody in Highland Park they're just pissed off, right? Except for the new people. And it's strange because a lot of the gentrifiers, they don't even know like what damage they've done to our community, right? Like they don't really understand. I think after the Black Lives Matter movement that happened last year, I see a shift of them like trying to help now, right? Like whenever I do the Nelly Alliance for Students campaigns, they're always like, oh, how can I help? I want to help. I want to give back, right? And one of the arguments would be like, oh, you're a sellout. I go, no, we got to hold these people accountable, and and get their money and to feed our people, because it's really bad out there. Like, and it's just getting worse. Yeah, so let's talk about gentrification. I'm glad it's in your campaign. So like, if you become councilwoman, like, because it's a very complicated issue, right? Because I know like Gil Cedillo is like very pro gentrification. Like even him and his buddy Bill Cody, like they just push it with all the new restaurants and all the new liquor licenses. I don't know if you know, like in Highland Park, we have about 90 liquor licenses right now.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? And we try to stop it because it's just way too much. But it's part of the gentrification machine, because whenever a real estate investor buys or flips a house, and when they do the flyer, they're like, oh, we're right next to Cafe de Leche, or we're right next to this hip bar or restaurant, right? And that's how they justify the $1.5 million house, 2-bedroom, 1 bath, right? They don't justify it by we're near the ocean, or, we're by the mountain, whatever it is. No, they justify it by the new up and coming restaurants, and, that's how they sell it. So if you become council member, how would you, deal with the gentrification, and especially like in MacArthur Park? Like, not a lot of CD1 communities have been gentrified, in Highland Park, but like Lincoln Heights is about to get gentrified, MacArthur Park. So what would you do to, try to like slow down this development?
That's a great question. And, it's another piece where I'm learning deeply about like what actually we can do. What are the mechanisms we can enforce? And a lot of that has to do with zoning.
Mhm.
And, the side that is for development and selling our communities out have leveraged the mechanism of changing the zoning laws to sell people out, to sell whole plots of land to future business development, to future gentrified business corridors. I'm thinking about MacArthur Park. And so as a council person, what I would do is begin to leverage the same tools that, the opposition has leveraged to build out, gentrifying business corridors, to build out small business corridors that are owned by the people who live in that neighborhood. We have thousands of street vendors on our streets who are constantly being erased throughout the city, who are constantly being erased and removed in this district. And so even thinking about MacArthur Park, around the park itself, there are 4 or 5 empty buildings sitting there while our people are selling food on the streets. And so one thing in Measure J, Measure J was an initiative that we passed last year at the LA County level through the ballot measure. Over 2 million voters supported it in LA, and it moved money into different things. One of the things being small business support. And so there's millions of dollars going into support small businesses that I will also, leverage and push to leverage to support small businesses here, so that they have an opportunity to compete, both like getting people up to speed on website development, on, the way that they're able to accept cash, like building up small businesses owned by Black, Brown, Indigenous, low-income people. And then to stop that, those are a few things, but I think around like anything that's built in this city, at least for me, as a person in this who would represent this area, would participate in whatever processes. And if not, they don't have processes to plug in, then create processes where we can have a robust discussion about what it will look like for, someone to build in this community. And right now, you're right, there's a lot of businesses that have been gentrified in this district. And there, other neighborhoods, it's happening to other neighborhoods. I think Boyle Heights was one of them, one of the neighborhoods that showed to fight back with like a warrior mentality, which they were amazing at. Yeah. And also it's very hard to keep doing. It's, it burns people out. But I think part of the role of the work that we'll do around gentrification is also to begin to hold people who are already in these spaces accountable. Like you mentioned a few businesses on York, like there's businesses on Figueroa. What more can we do to hold them accountable in this space? Like, look, you came into this neighborhood. What more can you give back to the neighborhood? Are you doing local zip code hires? Are you hiring people from the neighborhood? Are you giving back to the neighborhood? And, other than through the business, improvement development or district group, through the bids. Yeah. And so there's a lot that we can do. And I think we're going to be figuring it out as we go, because there really hasn't been really good examples of how council members can stop gentrification. Yeah. And so I'm going to pull whatever tool we have. And I think we're going to be setting the stage and setting the standard for what kind of policies we can do to push back against gentrification, to protect our communities, but also to invest in our community so we have a chance to compete. And so that's what comes up for me. And again, we're still learning, we're figuring this out, but gentrification has devastated us, and it's torn apart our families, and we need to find ways to fix the harm and also to prevent it from happening in other places. But investing in our people, so our people can buy those businesses. Our people can have enough money to open up a slot if they wanted to be a part of a swap meet or anything like that.
No, for sure. Yeah. And that's one of the things I created the workshops is to teach people, especially the young people, right? Like about
Yeah.
credit and investment. So then like this doesn't happen again to our communities, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
because it just hit us from like left field, right? Just fucking just took.
Yep.
But if we were
Like in
like,
Highland Park, yeah, people didn't
if
even have a chance to organize.
no,
Like
no, not
this
at
shit
all.
happened so quick. Like,
Yeah. Like I didn't know what the fuck gentrification was, right? Until I saw Nella Alliance, and then I started doing study on it. And yeah, we weren't even prepared for this shit. But that's why I have the workshops to educate the young people to to learn how to invest, learn about credit, learn how to prepare to buy their own homes, learn how to
mm-hmm.
start their own business, learn to like buy commercial buildings. So they're going to be prepared for their community when they raise their kids. They're not going to be wiped out, right? As fast as Highland Park was. And like, touching on Defend Boyle Heights, yeah, they were a militant minded group, and it worked because they were like, just like, yo, get the fuck out of here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like these cities art galleries, and it worked. And to this day, like I tell people, because I actually talked to an investor, she's putting a mall on York Boulevard, and she does a development all over the city. And she's like, oh, Echo Park, this and whatever. But and then I asked about Boyle Heights, and then she's like, oh no, they got people over there that they're fighting back. So a lot of investors don't want to invest there because there's a fight, right? Like if you want to invest in Boyle Heights, you have a fight in your hands. And investors don't want to fight, right? They want to make money. Right? So it's like it worked over there, right? But yeah, in Highland Park, like we just got wiped out because had no idea what the fuck was happening until it's too late, right? Uh, we'll see what happens because it's gonna be interesting with this pandemic. It just kind of like it put everything on pause, but right now, they're wrapping up again with all the marketing campaigns about Highland Park being cool, the Brooklyn of LA, and it's just a whole marketing thing. It's just this big animal just generating money and stuff, and we the people are the victims of this violence of just profit and capitalism, right? So is there anything else you want to talk about? Or oh, you're on mute. You're innocent. You're on mute. Yeah.
Thank you. No, you just reminded me of something, Mando. The flyers, right? The flyers of making Highland Park to gentrify, like to people outside, making it seem like it's the hottest shit on the market.
Yeah.
But, and this is what's messed up, is that at the same time, people who own homes in this district are getting bombarded with mailers 2-3 times a week, getting bombarded with calls several times a week, getting bombarded with texts saying, hey, let us get this headache off your hands. We want to buy your house cash right now. Yeah. Hey, are you interested in buying and selling your house? We'd like to buy it cash right now. Oh, help us get rid of this headache for you. We'll buy your house. Don't worry. And it's like, the way that they're marketing it to our people is saying like, yeah, you don't want your house. You don't want to live here. This is too much of a headache for you. Here's easy money. We'll buy it cash right now. Yeah. And when gentrification barely hit, like when it was barely hitting on my block, that's what happened. We had a lot of older Latinos living on my block where, these offers started coming in, boom, boom, boom. And like, let's buy your house. And that's how a lot of people on my block, they left here. Some of them were renting, not owning their houses, and they had to move out because the owner saw how gentrification was moving, and they're like, okay, well, now you have to move out because we're going to sell this home. That happened to like 2 or 3 homes on my block. And so like the way that this is like, I'll say system, but it's like capitalism, these developers, people who want to come into this community, the way that they bombard our people and try to convince them that, your home is a headache instead of the home and the land that you own being the way that you're going to have intergenerational wealth in your family, because that's how you build it in this country. Yeah. Selling, like making people seem like, yeah, sell your home for some thousands of dollars. And you unknowingly selling away the American dream that you worked so hard for. Yeah. And so that shit messes me up. It makes me so angry. Like, and when I mean texts and the calls and the mailers, like that's also happening to me. Like I save the stacks of letters that are coming in constantly. I have text messages where people are saying, can we buy your house? I replied one time, I was like, I'm not selling this unless you give me 1.7 million. And I wouldn't sell it even for that. But like years ago, I would say, oh, I'm not going to leave unless they offer us 1.2 million. That was like 2 years ago. I said that.
Yeah.
And now there's a house next to mine that sold for over $1.3 million, which was over the asking price, thousands of dollars over the asking price. We have a house, 2 houses down from mine, that's also now for sale. That's, I think, at 1.4 million for sale. And so it's messed up. And I'm angry, and I don't know what else to say other than I think it's fucked up. Like, it's like this mental like game that they're trying to play with you, trying to make it seem like this is the way to go. But in fact, you're selling away everything you worked so hard for, that you could actually pass down to future generations, so that their kids can own the home. And it's a lot.
And the thing is, because these real estate investors, they don't give you the high price, they don't give you the market value. They'll lowball you, right?
Yep.
Because they want to make a profit. So they'll tell you, oh, I'll buy it for 500 or 6 or 7, right? And then they'll flip it for like 1.5, whatever. And then, but then people will be like, oh, well, they cashed out, now they're gonna retire, and that I always hear that, oh, they made out, good for them. But then, when you sell your house, you're gonna pay taxes on that motherfucker, right? Capital gains. And then where are you gonna go, right?
Because you can't afford it here.
You can't afford it. You gotta go like Kentucky, right? Or something like that.
Lancaster, Palmdale.
Whatever, yeah. And then another thing, a lot of the homeowners here in Highland Park are elderly, right? And a lot of them they passed away, or they've gone to homes. So that's when like the kids come in, and in their eyes, okay, like they didn't pay a dime in the mortgage, right? Not one fucking dime, right? But they're like, oh, let's put the home and shit. We'll just fucking sell the house, and we can get all the and it's fucked up, right? The mentality too, right? Because that's why a lot of houses have been sold in Highland Park. And then in the apartments, the rental, it's just but the way I see it, in my opinion, because the economy fixes itself. Like, you can't sell Highland Park homes for 1.5 forever, right? It ain't that hip. It always corrects itself, because you can't justify 2-bedroom, 1 bath for 1.5. There's no ocean. There's still violence. It's just a lot of stuff. You can't justify it. At some point, it's gonna fix itself.
Well, I would hope so. And Mondo, if we think like for the next 4 years, if nothing changes and we're still in the same direction where, we have the same leadership,
we're screwed.
Like, it's not gonna fix itself. And if it does fix itself, it'll be like it fixes itself where it looks like it's mostly rich white people who live here. And then it'll be fixed, right? Because we won't be here. They'll run us out. And so
So is there anything else you want to touch on? Or?
I just last thing I'll say is that, I hope if people want to reach out, we're online, you have a website, we're on Twitter, Facebook, all the platforms. I want to keep meeting with as much people as possible to hear, how it is for people on the ground in the district. I'm meeting with folks in Chinatown, MacArthur Park, because, this campaign is for the people. It's of the people. Mm-hmm. Policy shouldn't come from the top down. Policy should be developed in community and brought up so that policymakers can work with community to push things forward. And so, just like I've done in my work on the county, at the state level, and community, building coalitions to advance things that are going to help our communities thrive, the same type of energy, the same type of relationships I'm going to bring to this space, because we can't do it by ourselves. I don't want to do this by myself. Mando, you said earlier, thank me for stepping up, because this shit is scary. I feel like this is a sacrifice, because I'm leaving the work that I love so much. Mm-hmm. But also, it's a sacrifice if someone doesn't step up, because people are gonna die. And that might sound exaggerated, because people die every day, but they will die because we have failed as leadership to support them. And so, that's what I'll say. And I really hope that people vote. That's the most important thing. You all need to vote. The primary is on June 7th of 2020. You can vote by mail. You can vote in person. But why I'm saying this is because this is a non-presidential year. There's not going to be a president to vote on this, so it means lower voter turnout. Yeah. CD1 is a district where we have a low voter turnout. The last election that the last person won to represent this district, he only won by 11,000 votes. 11,000 votes.
Yeah.
And so we need people to come out and vote. And I'm going to keep pushing that and emphasizing that. And yes, so please vote. Please follow us on social media. If you can, donate. If you live in the city of LA, we're part of the matching funds program. So if you donate anything between $1 and $114, the city will multiply it by 6. And so that's really helpful for us. We're not taking no developer money, no law enforcement money, no dirty money. All of it is community money because we're for the people. And so again, Mando, thank you so much for having me, for your time, for everything you're doing in our community to feed our people, to fight for our people, and for giving me space, to talk about this, and for all your support. I really, really appreciate it.
No, for sure. And I'll post the link on to volunteer or to donate on when I post the video. All right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, cool. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. So yeah, I'll see you. And we're still gonna fight to get this seat, and we're gonna take. I'm telling you, you have a great chance because, like the guy you told me, the guy Cedillo almost lost, right? And right now everybody just hates Cedillo, like his whole district hates, except for MacArthur Park, it's the Southern District. But no, I mean, I totally see you winning it too. So unless he gets indicted by the FBI. But yeah. All right, Eunices. All right, thank you. I'll see you around.
Thank you, Mando. Cuídate.
Okay.
Take care. Happy holidays.
Happy
and
holidays.
Please let me know. Yeah, let me know if there's anything I can do to support any of the events you're moving forward. I would love to plug in if I can.
Right. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'll let you know.
Okay.
All
Happy
right.
holidays. Thank you.
Bye.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.